Most people talk about social media like it's just content and algorithms. This episode is about what it does to our brains, our boredom, and our real life relationships. Today I'm joined by Kriti Gupta, one of the sharpest minds in media, culture, and internet behavior, to talk about living online, building a career by saying yes before you're ready, why fake productivity is everywhere, and how social media isn't online or offline anymore, it's just life. This episode is brought to you by Sked Social, the social media management platform built for people who actually care about strategy, community, and doing socials properly, not just posting and praying. Let's get into it. We're live now, and Kriti Gupta. It's about time that I invited you on the podcast. How the bloody hell are you?
I'm really good. I'm glad that we're finally doing this because how many DMs have been exchanged about, "Oh, do you wanna catch up? Do you wanna do this?" And it just social life gets gets forgotten. But this time, we turned it around in, like, 12 hours.
I know, we made stuff happen. And that's what I know about you. You just move quickly. Following your journey over the last few years and just seeing all the stuff that you put out has been like mind blowing, to be honest. But like, I don't think I've ever asked you this, but like, how did you get into this world in the first place?
Um, I originally was studying architecture and town planning in university, but before that, in high school, my father was, like, in Rotary clubs and did all those, like, charity things, and you have, like, the Lifeline Book Fests and all of that, and this is back in, like, 2011, 2012. The world was supposedly ending, but Facebook was in its peak, and for getting people to these events and, like, all of that type of stuff, the Facebook events was kind of where it was all at, so my dad saw me obviously using Facebook and social media and everything, and he was like, "Well, can you help with that for the Rotary Club? We've got, like, the book fest, and we've got, like, the event at the showgrounds, and we've got this," and that's what I was doing in the background while I was in school, and I got, paid, like, 20 bucks or whatever for it, and that was fun. And once I got into university, I was in a lot of student societies. I was that kid who had every single extracurricular in high school, but also in university. And so I was doing like the Model UN conferences, and they also had like big social presences. And it just kind of snowballed from there. And I ended up leaving my original degree and moved into political science and communications, which, if you look at where I am now in my career, that makes a lot more sense. And I got my first, like, media job at the 2018 Commonwealth Games.
It's funny how it all sort of works out. Hey, like you think you're on this certain path and then it sort of leads to a different way. Have you always sort of been someone to just like take opportunities as they come and not be so like locked in and set with stuff and just sort of, yeah, just see what kind of happens and just go from there?
Absolutely. I'm 99% sure that at the start of my career, I pretended like I knew how to use Photoshop, and then I just went on to YouTube and I was like, "Okay, how do I use InDesign?" And then I ended up designing a whole book for DFAT for, like, a new Colombo plan project while I was in India in a hotel room because I was like, "Well, I have no choice, and if I want this, then I need to watch these YouTube videos for the next 6 hours and make it happen."
What about like putting yourself personally online and living there and posting and just doing all that? When did that sort of start for you? And was it like nervous before you started doing it, or were you more excited about just sort of delving into that world?
I think, like a lot of women who are in media, I ran fan pages and I wrote fan fiction, and I was a massive, massive Tumblr girl in my teens. And I deleted that blog a long time ago. There is no digital footprint of my Tumblr era in that sense, except for a few viral photos of like my scene kid days. And there's like, you can find the big side fringe and me hanging out with pop punk bands around Soundwave era. But I that was me, and I know that that is a very familiar story for a lot of very, very successful women in this space because that was where we were allowed to be unapologetically ourselves, but then it also gave us a lot of tools, like, MySpace with coding your first MySpace profile and all of that, where unfortunately, I think now we do have a lot of options and outlets for creativity, but I think the creativity is kind of tempered in a way. We're not coding or things in the same way we used to. There's a lot less time that's available to us. So I do sometimes miss that.
I used to love the Top Friends. I feel like every day I'd change them all up and change the song, and um, it is weird because like growing up in an era like before that kind of all happened as a kid, and then seeing it happen, and then at a place where we're at now, where it's like I remember when that kind of life didn't really exist growing up, and these days it's like you're seeing kids as early as like 4 and 5 and stuff just jump on the internet and just see what's going on, and
Yeah.
it's a bit of a tricky one to navigate, hey, especially with, like, younger people, coming through and, like and using social media, like, in a healthy way, because I think it's like, I'm online all the time. You know, I'm, like, checking stuff all the time, and I'm like, "If I was doing this since I was, like, a kid, surely that can't be good for you." Have you ever sort of had to, like, put in place some, like, restraints and stuff for yourself personally when living on.
Yes, absolutely. And I think speaking to the stuff about children, obviously that's such a topical conversation in the country at the moment, with the social media ban and kind of prohibition versus education. And I'm very firmly on the side of education. You look at prohibition historically, time and time again, it only just leads to then underground behaviors that you then don't have support or control over as adults. And we saw that in the past when we were kids, when there were spaces. But I think the difference was there were a lot more spaces on the internet then that were for teenagers, whereas now there is no separation of spaces in the digital sphere for adults versus teenagers versus kids. So that's the biggest thing that we're missing out on, and what the next generation is missing out on, unfortunately, because they're like, okay, well, here's the internet, but it's not the internet for you; it's the internet for everyone. For myself personally, the restrictions that I struggle with it. I don't think anyone who is in this industry, who is doing well in this industry, can confidently be like, oh yeah, I have like a very little screen time, because then you probably wouldn't be very good at your job. But the things that I found that have worked for me is deliberately going to places where there is no signal for my holidays, because otherwise you then just end up checking anyway, even when you're on holidays. I distinctly remember a time where I was on top of a canyon and I was like, I should look at my LinkedIn right now. I'm like kayaking through a canyon here and I'm like, I should check my LinkedIn. And rewiring your brain in that way, it is kind of, there is an addiction level when it comes to social media. So forcing myself to be in a city for a week where there's no signal then helps me reset and then get back into play. So I highly recommend, like, they're onto something with those like unyoked cabins and stuff like that. Like 10 out of 10.
100%. I still remember, when I went to see Blink play for the first time back in, like, 2011, 2012, or something like that, and I remember
I went to that show.
the Sydney Mine Music Bowl, it was so sick, but I spent my whole time on the camera just taking everything, and I remember after I was like, "Why didn't I just put the phone down and actually absorb where I was?" I was too worried about the picture or the video that I was gonna post, and it's like, "What the fuck am I doing?" You know what I mean? It's like being in the moment versus, like, capturing the moment, and I think the dopamine hit now is, like, clicking post and then seeing what the reaction's gonna be.
I spent a lot of time over this last like summer Christmas period, and I think this was also the first time where I noticed a lot of people did take those full 2 weeks off, and I took those 2 weeks off for the first time in years. And it was actually kind of reassuring to know that everyone was offline, because then it meant that if you missed anything, everyone was missing it, so it was fine. Um, but one of the things, I mean, and travel is such a big part of how I reset and how I, like, take a step back from living online, but then also there's the contrast to that, because it's like if you went there and you didn't take a photo, did you really go anywhere? Um, but what I noticed is the stimulation that I feel like is sometimes missing in our Australian life outside. So if you go outside and say Sydney in the city, I'm not as easily, like, distracted by, like, the sights and the sounds and the smells, because Australia, contrastingly to, say, somewhere in, like, Southeast Asia or in Latin America or in Europe, you're not, like, being attracted by architecture or beauty in the same way, because you become so accustomed to it. So I'm trying to find these ways of getting like that dopamine hit from outside a little bit more. And so coming back, as I mentioned earlier when we were speaking, my morning walk, I don't take my phone on my walk in the morning anymore. So I'm not even counting my steps. And I'm like, because it was like, okay, well, who am I measuring these steps for? Like I still took the walk. Like the walk was for myself, not for my step tracker. So, which is again a reframing that you really have to do with yourself. Um, and if I have the urge to take a photo of something while I'm on that walk, I am taking my little film camera with me, which is not electronic. So there is nothing that I'm taking with me in the morning. I'm taking a physical card, a physical camera, and my physical keys. Not taking music because I think like you need to also be able to allow your brain to get bored. Um, and it's half an hour every single morning, and sometimes I get really mad and I'm like, "Where I have nothing to do. I've looked at the same trees 50 times." But we've lost the art of boredom, and I've found that that has been really even half an hour. It's the same as, like, when we were younger, and it was the whole, "Make sure you do 30 minutes of exercise physically for your body," but I also think make sure you do 30 minutes of exercise physically for your brain in that
I
way.
love that. I love that. Yeah. And boredom's a big one. Like I don't think I've just sort of come to that realization this year as well. It's like I can't remember the last time I've been like bored. And as a kid, I remember you had to make your own fun. It wasn't like
Yeah.
there was all these different distractions. It's like, no, you got to think of stuff. You got to like have a bit of an imagination. You got to be able to sit with nothing because yeah, I think like it's easy to just fill your calendar up and your day up with just a bunch of stuff. And it's like,
And you know me, I love a color coordinated calendar. Everyone's seeing a color coordinated calendar.
it is
But
productive, but it's fake, I think,
fake
sometimes.
productivity. It's fake productivity. So that's I found that's been really helping, but also something as mundane as laundry. I have a whole routine with my laundry because I live in an apartment that doesn't have a washing machine.
Yeah.
Um, so I have to leave the house for like 3 hours to go do my laundry every week. And previously, I used to take my laptop, and while the laundry was going, I would sit there and continue to work. And it felt like this, again, fake level of productivity because how much, like, by the time you put the laundry in the washing machine and you sit down and you open your laptop and it's like, wow, it's almost done. So it's like, what's the point?
What do you think like are good skill sets that people who work in socials, content, media have? Have there been any like consistent skills or patterns that you've noticed over your time?
I think one of the things is the genuine love. You cannot be in this field if you don't have like this deep, deep love for it and this desire every single day to learn more, to do more, to be more, which obviously has its cons around, I guess, being chronically online and the detriments that it does have to your health in that way. But I think when you see people who have such an unbridled level of passion for the industry, it is infectious. Like the way that we talk or the things that we interact with online, and we're often in the same comment sections talking about
Yeah.
things, and that level of community and camaraderie that comes there, that is where I see the most successful people.
I love that. And like pop culture, I feel like when people bring up stuff that's happening in any different types of social settings, it's like, yeah, I kind of know what's going on because I've seen it or I've sort of learnt about it. So it makes it easier to join in on sort of like social combos. And then you can build those relationships where, if you live offline and you don't really know what's going on, it might be hard, whether that's a good or bad thing. But I see like knowing that stuff is a super skill, but it can also burn you out as well. So it's
Also
like
been
that
yeah.
balance, hey?
I think what's really interesting with that is there's that little meme image whenever someone finds something, it's like, "I can't believe I learnt this by Pop Base," and it's also like that town crier image. Have you seen that in the TikTok's comment sections?
Yeah.
I One of the things that humbles me the most is my friends who are nowhere near our industry, and I it sounds ridiculous, but I think it's incredibly important not to only be friends with people who do the same job as you, and that applies to everyone. Doctors shouldn't just be hanging out with doctors, and it's that whole same element. But my friends are really, really good at humbling me when I act like the Beckham PR disaster is the biggest thing on the planet.
Yeah. 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 Well, that was huge. That was
That was
huge.
huge, and to be fair, that was huge yesterday, and, it was incredibly fascinating, the way that the world, including myself, even responded to it, but, the whole premise of it's PR, not ER does knock me down whenever I really, really need it to, and I appreciate that it does. I
Yeah.
think that's the biggest thing is, um everyone's job is important, obviously, to make the world go round, but I'm not saving anyone's life with an Instagram post or a brand strategy or a TikTok video, like, and I am well aware of that, but idealistically, at 22, I thought I was, which is insane.
Well, it's funny. It's just that ability to zoom out, hey, and just
Yeah.
see big picture stuff. Like if you're a surgeon, I feel like what you're doing is pretty urgent. You know, like if you make mistakes there, like you're in a bit of trouble. But like an Instagram post or entertainment or just chiming in on the conversation, hey, just
Yep.
like having an opinion on something and then seeing that relatability, I suppose. It's like that connection piece of, hey, I've been thinking this stuff in my head. I put it out there and then people are kind of agreeing or not agreeing and there's feedback there. It's kind of just like, I don't know, like challenges your thoughts sometimes, I feel.
Challenges your thoughts, and also something that you just said before around, like, jumping in on a piece or, like, responding to things. I think we in our field, we very heavily be quite hard on ourselves if we do miss something, but the cycle moves so fast and you physically cannot speak to absolutely every single thing that is going on in the world right now. And one, that's a pressure that we put on ourselves, but it's also a pressure that unfortunately society has also put on the space. So it's a catch-22 in that sense because people are like, "Oh, you should get offline. You're spending too much time online." But also, why didn't you speak on this? Why didn't you talk about this? Oh, did you not see that? Um, and you look at the volume of content coming out, which is more than ever, it's physically impossible to consume it all as a person. So it's a reality check that we need to have for ourselves, but also as consumers need to have for themselves. You can't expect one brand, one person, one creator to speak on absolutely everything.
What about your creative process? What does that look like when you're working with people, when you're doing your own sort of posts? Is it different? Do you like heavily plan your stuff or is it more just like I've got this thought, I might store stuff in the background for a bit and then build on it? Like how do you sort of go about it?
For my clients, it's a lot more structured, obviously, um, especially 'cause of when it comes to I work across a lot of different spaces, so I work on the publisher, like, magazine side of things, so that's definitely, like, the news consumption, news publisher type of space, but then I also work with, like, big blue chip kind of clients and stuff, and that's more of the decks, and that's more traditional advertising agency style of work. And then there's my own stuff. And then there's also in my head now, which is my new venture. So they're all very different strategies. I would dare say that the in my head plus my own content kind of blurs together, obviously, because I'm so synonymous with the brand, and it's just two of us at the moment, me and my my assistant. Um, but there, I love. What was that noise?
I don't know, was that mate?
Yeah.
I don't
It sounded like Thomas the Tank Engine.
Oh really? I missed that show.
Sorry, I got so distracted.
No, it could have been me. I don't know.
That's so fine. With a lot of those bigger clients, there is a lot more structure and red tape. So something that I would love to see come live in 24 hours won't because, legal processes, all of that type of stuff. And there's a different headspace and approach to things like that. With news, again, you look at something like I'm speaking about Beckham again because it was yesterday and it's fresh in our minds, but that's something that if you didn't really get live by the end of the day, your opinion or thought or the processes or whatever you were wanting to apply to that story, it would be too late by the time tomorrow rolled around. And then with my own content, I feel like I finally worked out where I sit in that space as an advocate and the pillars that I sit across. Whereas previously, I used to post any and everything and that was my because I was using all of my other creative juices on my clients, whereas now I feel like I finally found a split and a balance, and that took 10 years to get to that point.
Oh,
So it was not an overnight success story of like, I know exactly what I'm doing in terms of how to separate those things. No.
we've heard authenticity, like it's a bit of a buzzword, but like,
I hate
you,
this.
yeah, what are your thoughts on that? Yeah, I'd love to hear your hot take.
I don't really think I have a hot take. I think the idea when people say, "Oh, you need to be authentic," they're like, "Oh, you need to cry or you need to be very emotional," or like that's kind of this approach of like you really need to be like raw. But I fear that humanity and society as a whole isn't really authentic in general anymore. The way that we interact on the street or the way that we kind of speak at the like, is the thing that I'm trying to get to is if we're not engaging in interactions outside authentically, then how are we expected to online? Um, Australia is notoriously known and seen, by studies and also on the global stage as, like, a country that is very, very hard to make friends in, which is very, very big contrast to how Australia positioned itself, say, 30, 40 years ago on mateship. Now, we go outside, and this is part of the reason why I do that walk without my phone and my headphones is I have finally started talking to my neighbors. I have lived in this apartment for 3 years until I made the active decision of trying to have interactions and authentic interactions with them. Did I have these people have lived alongside me for years, and I never knew what they did or what they spoke about or what they cared about. And that has bled into our online way of communicating and way of presenting ourselves and how we also show up in the comment sections. So, what people often try to separate this online world and offline world, and I've spoken about this on other podcasts recently, but it is just our world, and until we decide to embrace it all fully and be ourselves fully across every single facet of it, this whole idea of authenticity will never actually fully translate.
I love that take. It's not like we're down the shops and then we're crying to a stranger and being super, you gotta somehow put something up where it's like, you can't just be all out, and that's why I see, like, the crying videos and things like that. Like, there's probably a small percentage of those ones that are actually real, and then the rest just feels a bit like performative, like, it's like,
Mm.
you're trying to do this to get this, but, yeah, it's a interesting, um, perspective, and I love that. What about, like, advice throughout the years? That has there been anything that anyone said that sort of stuck with you, throughout your journey where you just sort of lean on? I think for me, one thing that I heard was, the act of confidence comes before the feeling of confidence. So when it's like anything that comes up, I'm just like, I just got to just sort of fake it and then I'll feel it, you know? So has there been anything like that for you where you use that as like an anchor?
Um, when I was and this advice rings true into my ear still to this day because I think it applies, even more so now to where I'm at in my career. When I was an editor at a travel magazine, I remember one time complaining to my friends that I was tired from traveling. It was a travel magazine, so that was the whole job. And then I came into the office the next day and I was talking to my colleague about it. And she mentioned, Kriti, the only people that will empathize with you on the struggles of traveling for your job are the 5 people in this room right now. In the sense of being really, really appreciative for the career that I have. And, there's all of that try being an influencer for a day conversations that come up online. Every single job is hard, don't get me wrong, but to then go online or go to my friends who, have worked 16 hours on their feet. I might have worked a 16-hour day, sure, but I've been on the couch. I've had Netflix playing in the background. I've had as many cups of coffee as I want. I've called my friends in the middle of the day. You can have a level of like oh, yes, I've had a hard day, but there's perspective, and I think perspective and nuance keeps getting lost in this industry quite easily, and there's a lot of woe is meism that goes around, um, and contrastingly, I'm like, "Yes, I'm tired, but I am so lucky to be tired."
I love that. No, I love that, and it's really humbling when you have friends who do work hard in different areas, and it just
Mhm.
really puts it into perspective of like, okay, like I've my brother-in-law and friends, they're working 12-hour days, putting steel in and stuff, and I know that they couldn't do the stuff that we probably
Yeah,
do because it's like it'd mess with their brain, but it's like
with their brains.
physically, I'm like, there's no way I could do that.
There's no way. And I think the problem and it's not just in like this media space that we play in. I think the problem is that we often are surrounded by people who are the same as us. And that is what is leading to a lot of the divisiveness that exists in every facet of the world right now. And so the biggest and most important piece of advice, even taken out from like content and social media advice, is to have a diverse and not diverse in the sense of, like, skin color or, like, racial background, but to have a diverse village and community around you. So, have friends who I think it's incredibly important to have friends who are, say, a decade older than you when you're in your 30s, and then also someone who's, like, 22 to get the different perspectives on life. To have people who work in different industries, the reasons that in previous generations and stuff, you had those, kind of like community, moments where, you'd be playing chess with grandparents. That then gives you a different way of looking at the world. It might not necessarily be something that you agree with, and you probably shouldn't agree with every single thing that they say, but it opens your mind, and that is what we are missing constantly. So if you only hang out as an influencer with other influencers, then you are going to be like, oh my God, my job is so hard. And if as a doctor, you only hang out with other doctors, and if as an accountant, all of your friends are also in suits or they're all finance bros, you guys are just gonna be in the same little bubble for the rest of your lives, and that applies to everything. Like, honestly, applies to everything. The person that humbles me the most is actually my 8-year-old cousin because she lectures me about my spending habits more than anyone else in my life does.
I love that. It's like the echo chamber, you know? I think
Yep.
the algorithm can sometimes be a prison where it's like,
Yeah.
it just shows you all this stuff and like, I love that because it's like, yes, I'm interested in it, but it's like
Okay,
training
but what about your
yourself.
real life algorithm? Like,
Yeah,
look at it.
exactly.
Everyone's complaining about the algorithm on their phone, but what about your algorithm that's outside in your real life? That is the first thing that you should be changing if that is what's causing you to fall into this little spiral.
I love that. And forming arguments, even for myself, when I think I've got a strong opinion on something, I'll go try and source out the opposite to see what they are saying. Cause I think the ability to change your mind, where it's like, actually, that's a good point. I didn't really think of it like that. I can see why people would feel that way, or you know what I mean? It's just not being so headstrong and stubborn with your beliefs and thoughts as well.
We I also really think that our generation grew up in this space where it was like when we were in our early 20s, we were like, I'm so smart, I'm so strong, woke 2016 kind of era, which is like where it was like we needed that level of wokeism, absolutely, but it drilled like this belief in our head that everything we thought and felt in any given moment was right and everything else was wrong without even looking at what was going on. When I was 20, I was like, "The UN is awesome. I'm gonna work there forever. They're, like, fixing the planet." 30-year-old me has spent time, has learned, has realized that, yes, at 20, ultimately that was true because that is the level of knowledge and experience and understanding of the world that I had at that time, and those beliefs were valid. But now that I've had 10 years of experience, this is also true in this moment in time, and to be able to acknowledge that I'm with the like, with the information that I had then, perfect. But also, if I were to have those beliefs now, that would not be correct.
Yep. Yep. I feel like in a world where people just attack people and they don't sort of form like friendly arguments, like it's okay to disagree and you don't have to attack people personally or get real. I feel like when people don't really know what they're talking about or explaining, I feel like they go straight to
What
let's
is
do
the
this. It's like,
The
no.
loudest voice mentality is so prevalent right now, which I it's so funny because when we're talking about, like, content and the type of topics that I speak about on my own account, I you would see that you've seen this, the way that I definitely speak about very serious topics, I go very, like, calm and neutral, whereas when I'm talking about something like ice cream or, like, coffee and wine, I get very excited. And then so people contrastingly said, "Oh, I think are you that's AI," because, like, I'm all of a sudden, like, really, really because I'm trying to be the complete opposite of, like, the loudest voice in that space, because I don't see a benefit in yelling about these things. I will never see, especially as a woman of color, it's never going to work in the issue's favor. Forget about my own favor, but for what I'm trying to make a change on, it's just going to be a hindrance to everyone. If I yell excitedly about a particular white wine, then everyone's happy anyway, so it doesn't matter.
It's thinking about the outcome. Hey, it's like
Yeah.
if the delivery is like this, I don't feel like the outcome's gonna be the one that I want to achieve, and, not going into things thinking that you know everything as well. So that's, a good way to look at it. What about, like, AI? Like, how do you use AI in your life, with all the stuff that you do?
I use it a lot for reporting,
Yeah.
because I don't like numbers.
Yeah, me neither.
Um,
Worst.
I d I don't like numbers, so I definitely use it for that, but as a writer, I don't use it for writing. I don't believe in using it for writing. I don't believe in using it for therapy. I will never go into ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini or whatever else there is out there at the moment and be like, "Hey, my boyfriend texted me this, and I'm feeling this. What should I say back to him?" Um, and that is because for mental health and for support, I encouraging people to use AI as a substitute, and that is what a lot of spaces are doing. Is going to worsen the mental health crisis, and that is been researched already, and we can see the impacts of that. It is incredibly beneficial for a first resource for, say, someone who has never even heard of the word depression or bipolar or anything like that. I think it is an incredible resource for that, and I've seen the positive impacts of that happen. But beyond that, I can see firsthand in a lot of my friends who are like, "Oh, why don't you just chat GPT that?" And I'm like, "No, I would rather ask Satan himself."
No, 100%, and even, like, my, sisters who are parents, it's like listening to my mum about advice or listening to ChatGPT, it's like, "Well, hang on, this is someone who's kinda lived it, you're not gonna get everything right and
Yeah,
perfect," you know?
no. Yeah,
No.
absolutely. I think the whole parenting one is incredibly fascinating because I can see where that is going for a lot of people, and they're like, "Oh, like, should I buy this or should I buy this?" And I'm like, "Well, that parenting is already, like, a very, very difficult space, and there's so many opinions. To then be taking advice from a robot, if we wanna use the word robot, whatever, um, does feel like," and this sounds very tinfoil hat of me, but it does feel like the corporate overlords trying to make us as lonely as possible so that we do then rely and pay on technology rather than the people around us. And it's that convenience tax.
I love that, and I don't think that's the first thought that pops into people's head when they think about that is, like, the
Mm.
profits that these companies make by having you on that and rely on that so much to get through your daily life. Like, even now, like, learning about how to sell to AI agents now. Like, you're not even selling to people and
Not
stuff.
like selling to people anymore. So what's one of the things that I'm trying to do this year is not order Uber Eats as much. Um, because the shops are walking distance from my house.
Yeah.
And if not that, just to try and see people more, because if you live alone and you work from home and then you're ordering Uber Eats, when are you seeing people? When are you spending time with your community? When are you combating the loneliness crisis yourself?
I love that, and you know how I've sorta tricked myself into doing
Yeah.
more stuff like that, like small talk is like, when I go to like Coles or whatever, I go through the not self checkout. I try and go through where the people are, and then just talk to them, and they're almost surprised and shocked that someone's like, "Hey, how's your day going? Like, looks pretty busy," or whatever,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Um, I think we try and rush through because we're like, "Oh, yeah, I'll go through the self-checkout, it'll be faster, I'll get home faster." Get home faster to what? To sit and scroll on your phone? It's
In a
like,
rush to relax, you know? It's
you're
just like
not
weird.
relaxing though.
It's weird, isn't it? What about like the biggest opportunities you're seeing now in our space where, yeah, you kind of seeing like if people sort of lent in towards that, I can see that sort of happening really well.
I think the biggest opportunity, and I think we spoke about this at the end of last year, is acknowledging and accepting that it is all one system. So people are still going, "Oh, digital discourse, or this was online and this is offline," which is it's not the case. It's all one thing. Um, and so seeing that and being like, "Okay, how do I take this topic or this piece of content or this strategy from like a business perspective if we're looking at it from that and see it live across multiple touch points." And I don't mean in the typical like experiential sense. I mean in terms of the way that we psychologically engage with it. Um, and so that is incredibly important because we're already almost there. We're like 99% there as a society because everything that we talk and do offline ends up online or vice versa anyway. But it's just like there's this like fine little like film left between the two worlds, which I think will disappear over this next year.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And before I let you go, are there any like recommendations, accounts that people should sort of get around besides yourself, obviously? That you're seeing people do some good stuff and you're like, yeah, like follow these people and you'll be on the right path. Whether that's a book, podcast, TikTok account, whatever.
Yes, absolutely. My favorite book, one second, I have it right here.
Yeah, awesome.
So I'm rereading Hanging Out: The Radical Power of Killing Time by Sheila Linning. And it's split into a few different sections around like hanging out with friends and hanging out on the job and hanging out on TV. Um, and basically how to do that again because I think firstly with COVID and then also with how much we just live in our phones sometimes, that's been really, really helpful, and this is the second time that I'm reading it. I read it at the start of last year, and I'm reading it again now, just, like, with the new head, new approach to the year. My favorite account or personality, I guess, that I follow is Snackshot, Andrea Hernandez. I'm not sure if you're familiar. She started this, I think it was during COVID, and it's pretty much like a CPG Bible out of the United States. So it's like really like future forward thinking, spotlights a lot of cool brands like Get Graza and Truff and stuff like before they blew up to the level that in Australia people are now familiar with them. Really, really, really great for content ideas locally for a lot of clients, and, I think that's really helpful. And then the other thing that I think everyone should get onto is Plot. I don't know if you're familiar with that software.
No.
It was started by a bunch of social media professionals, and it's a great platform for trends and how to apply trends. It costs about $25 or $30 AUD a month, I think, for the basic package. And it is great. I think the thing that we often struggle with is like you'll save like all of these ideas and stuff, right? And then you can't find them. You can send the WhatsApp link to yourself and it like categorizes them into boards for like your different clients. It gives you daily trends listening and like gives you like a little explainer so that if you are explaining what the trend is to a C-suite member who might not have TikTok on their phone, it's helpful with that, and that is my secret tool that I don't really tell a lot of people about. So now if you listen to this whole like this whole episode, a lot of people know just how I do all of the work that I do.
I love that. I love that. I love that's the type of gold, honestly. It's like you need tools in your toolkit. And
Yeah.
yes, it can help all that sort of stuff, but you still need to really think about what you're doing and the strategy and
Oh,
those
yes.
types of things. But we live in a world now where there are unlimited tools and you can do a bunch of things. So it's about like finding probably your tool stack and
Yeah.
just
My
Yeah.
tool I really tried to be a Notion person. Wasn't I spent more time trying to make my Notion look good than actually using it. I just use my color coordinated calendar, and each color is just like a different client or my social appointments, or I even have a color for disassociating, which
love that.
because at the end of the week I want to know how much time I just like stared at the ceiling. Um And then my notes app, and what I've done instead is categorize my notes app folders for like different things, and it just like based on hashtags and stuff, and you can do it that way. And then email and plot and like LinkedIn. Like I have a very, very minimal tech stack. I think we tend to overcomplicate it. Oh, one more. And one
Yeah.
more. Have you
Oh,
guys heard of have you heard of Repurpose IO?
no.
Okay, this is the biggest time saver in the world. It is expensive. It is $50 a month, but you post your video on one platform, say it's Instagram, it will then link all of your accounts and post that to TikTok, Pinterest, YouTube, Snapchat. And in Australia, YouTube and Snapchat are putting in a lot of money now for creators, so it's very beneficial. And I think I got more views on Snapchat and YouTube last year, and I don't actually organically separately post anything onto those accounts. It's all through this.
That is insane. Hey, like
Work smarter, not harder.
I love that. I love that. And for people who want to get around your stuff in my head, where do they go?
So in my head is literally in my head, and it's on, which sounds funny when I say it out loud, lol. At in my head co. But everything that I do can always be found through my handle, because I treat my reposts as my portfolio, so you can see like every single client that I've worked with. And that is at Kriti on every single social platform under the sun.
I love that. All the links will be in the show notes too. But Critty, it's been an absolute pleasure. We'll have to get you on for round 2 again later
Yes.
in the year. But yeah, honestly, love this chat and look forward to following your stuff.
Thank you so much.